So I recently noticed that we updated our website and we've changed the wording around a little bit. For the life of Peak City Gym, we've been a fitness over 40 facility. And that's kind of been our tagline and what we focused on a lot. I recently noticed that we're doing fitness over 30 now. Is that accurate? How does that change things for us?
Yeah, no, it's definitely accurate. Fitness over 40 had a very nice ring to it, rolls off the tongue. However, when we get more into the research on what the critical decade is for people and actually getting ahead of some of the things that we've talked about, on this podcast and some of the content that we've put on social media, like sarcopenia, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, other things like that, the critical decade that I keep seeing in the literature and on from other professionals on social media and stuff like that is the 35 to 45 age group. And so I know that having the fitness over 40 tagline, it's done a lot of good for us and that a lot of people feel comfortable coming in here. They like the fitness over 40. That's usually when they start to seem to feel the changes. I guess I'll find out in about a year when I turn 40. But if we're going to try to be proactive about things, something that we're pretty critical about with the medical industry, how they're more reactive than proactive, well, we don't really want to follow that suit. We want to get ahead of things. And so, we did change the tagline to being an over 30 gym, just so that way we can get ahead of things. We're not turning people off at a time where they're looking for some answers, looking to get ahead of some of those diagnoses, and now we can help them out without feeling like there's a barrier. Not that we've ever ID'd at the door, but I know we have turned some people off when they see fitness over 40 and they're 34 and they choose like, oh, maybe this isn't for me, and it's like, no, this is definitely for you.
Yeah.
So that's really the reasoning behind the change. It doesn't, and it's really only a change in the tagline. It doesn't change any of the content we're putting out. Doesn't change any of the way that we train or anything like that. It's quite literally just changing the words 40 for 30. That's it.
We're still, the focus on the training and everything is still focused on the same thing. We're still putting the emphasis on longevity, building good principles for a healthier, longer, more active life.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. So let's get into today's actual meat and potatoes. We are going to talk about a recent episode that Jubilee put out. It's a media company that posts on YouTube, and they have a bunch of different series on their YouTube. We're specifically talking about an episode Jillian Michaels was a part of, and it's one of their Surrounded series. Basically, Jillian Michaels, and there's 20 to 25 people all surrounding her, kind of talking opposing views from what she has. So she starts off making 3 claims and then opens the floor to the people in the audience or the people in the environment to kind of respond and have a dialogue.
Yeah, these are all people from the body positivity movement, and I've watched the episode numerous times now to select some of these clips that we're about to see. But it's not even necessarily, and I'm not really like a Jillian Michaels fan. I'm not against her either, but I wouldn't say that she's against the body positivity movement. I think she's against what the body positivity movement has become. And it was an interesting watch. And like I said, I selected some of the clips to go with the claims that she made and then the counter arguments. It's in no way representative of everybody who's ever participated in or supported the body positivity movement. As you just said, it's only 20 to 25 people.
Yeah.
And not even all of them get to speak. All right. It's whoever races to the chair first. So, when I pull these clips out, I'm not suggesting that they speak for everybody in the body positivity movement. I'm not suggesting that this is, the body positivity movement in its entirety. But I think it's important to see some of this because a lot of them are professionals in some type of field, whether it be mental health. There's a registered dietitian we're going to take a look at. Some of them are a little bit more of like TikTok and social media influencers, which one of them admits, and I can't remember if it's in the actual clip, that's where a lot of them are getting their information from. And so I think it's important to see, this is where the information's coming from. This is how people are responding to it. And for right or wrong, this is what the body positivity movement has become.
This is really the point of this podcast is one, be a little bit different and see if this style of content actually works for us, but also have an open dialogue about our different thoughts and beliefs and really just kind of help you understand there is a different way to do things or a different way of looking at things or how we look or feel about things. So it's not the definitive guide. We are not obviously medical professionals, but take that with a grain of salt. We have worked with people for a while now.
I call myself a doctor of fitness, so I'm pretty much a medical professional at this point. No, just kidding.
All right, let's get into claim number 1.
So yeah, claim number 1 is, I think the exact words, actually I'm not exactly sure what the exact words were, but it's essentially that obesity is inherently unhealthy and pretending that it isn't actually affects lives or costs people their lives. And so the first clip is from an eating disorder therapist, and we'll just take a look at what she responds to Jillian Michaels' claim.
Nice to meet you.
I'm an eating disorder therapist. So the claim that you're saying is that it is inherently unhealthy to live in a fat body.
It's inherently unhealthy to have excess body fat, yes.
Okay, where are you getting that information from?
Oh, okay. There are dozens of MRT trials that show having excess body fat. Dozens is causal, not correlated.
No, that's not true. There's no disease that just fat-bodied people get.
I didn't say that. But obesity lends itself to all-cause mortality across the board. Have you heard of something called adiposopathy? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you know it means literally sick fat. And you understand how it works? Mm-hmm. Okay, tell me how it works.
So it's an additional layer of fat in the stomach area.
No, that's not what it is. It works as follows. When we eat too much food that has energy that we're not utilizing, the body needs to put that energy somewhere, right? So it puts it in fat cells. So it puts it in initially subcutaneous fat cells, a little bit of visceral fat, which is fat around the organs. And at first you have hyperplasia, which means we're recruiting new little fat cells, which isn't necessarily a bad thing up to a point. Now the issue is that once you can no longer recruit more fat cells, right, you get hypertrophy. So the fat cells start to expand. And this is exceptionally dangerous because what ends up happening is the blood vessels get outpaced. So the fat cells can't get oxygen and they start screaming, literally. And when they do, they release cytokines, inflammatory proteins, right?
I want to pause.
You fundamentally didn't describe it accurately.
But what I understand is that
What's lipotoxicity?
I don't want to talk about, I am not, okay, here, I'm going to say this straight out. I am not a medical doctor, okay? So I'm not going to talk to you about medical diagnosis because that's outside my scope and I'm fully willing, hey, I'm fully willing to be wrong. What I am here to talk to you about is the fact that people in fat bodies are irreparably harmed going into the medical system every single day because of the term, the O word.
So that's what you want to litigate?
I'm going to be honest with you. This clip really irritates me quite a bit. Partially because, she is supposed to be an eating disorder therapist, and she's responding to a claim about obesity, being inherently unhealthy. And right off the bat, this is the first person to actually debate Jillian Michaels. Mm-hmm. And right off the bat, number one, she doesn't understand, although she's pretending that she does, what Jillian Michaels is saying. Number two, she was about to do it again and then just said, never mind, I'm not a medical professional. And number three, you're on a national stage, so people are going to be watching this. Jubilee is pretty well known. And of course, Jillian Michaels is controversial, so that was one of the reasons that I started to watch this as well. Yeah. And so what is she doing in her clinical and private setting working with people if this is kind of her take on things? She doesn't understand or know what the terminology is and how it actually negatively affects people's health and overall life. I don't know what you guys think about it, but that was definitely something that kind of irked me in a not great way.
Yeah. I think there are validity to what the the therapist had said it's like outside of her scope. But she also shouldn't have claimed to understand what Jillian Michaels was saying in the first place. I think bringing those things up went a little bit outside the scope of what it is. I personally cannot argue that a higher body fat percentage lends itself more to all-cause mortality and other disease and illnesses. I totally agree with that. I think because of the setting, it kind of got diluted and went in a path that it didn't necessarily need to have because tensions were already high. People are going in combative.
Oh yeah, yeah, I obviously cut it out, but right off the bat they got into a little tiff on like kind of talking down to each other, and it got a little bit cleared up. Obviously, I can't play the whole thing already. You know, these clips, some of them are like 2 minutes long, and I was having a real hard time to cut it down where we could still grasp the entire context and get to the point. But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Jillian Michaels in terms of like, number one, your claim overall that it's inherently unhealthy to have excess body fat. Are you necessarily supposed to know all of the terms and, lipotoxicity and all that? Like maybe not hyperplasia. However, the general understanding is that, okay, well, yeah, it does lend itself to all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and things like that. And when she right off the bat is like, where are you getting this information? It's like, what? What do you mean, where are we getting this information? It's pretty well known. I don't know what your thoughts are, Jessica.
No, I definitely agree. I guess with Jillian Michaels on this one, which is not something I thought I would say at the beginning of the day. But she did maybe break it down a little bit too much for the therapist to understand. I think she maybe should have kept it in a little bit simpler terms. But what she was getting at is something that I definitely agree with.
Yeah, I think it's pretty widely researched and understood that excess body fat lends itself to an unhealthier outcome in life when A is compared to A. But that's not to say there are not unhealthy people who are not with excess adipose.
Oh, absolutely.
We see that all the time. But the risks are far higher when you are larger than what you normally could be.
I will say that while watching this episode, and you know that I've watched it a few times now, there are a lot of opposing views that are, the kind of like, what about, what if, what about, and it's like, yeah, well, we're trying to stick to the claim. I think that Jillian Michaels throughout the series, or the series of debaters, she does a good job of trying to get back to the claim. But yeah, of course, this claim is about obesity, but there are definitely people who maybe have a normal BMI, a normal body weight, and their diet consists of like Cheetos and Coca-Cola and stuff. And there's no way that I would argue that they are in any way healthier. Yeah. And as we know that I've brought up in the podcast before, I'm not speaking from a pedestal. There are plenty of pictures of me in a much larger body. And I don't mind when the BMI called me obese. It still calls me overweight, and I feel like I'm not, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not speaking from a pedestal or trying to talk down on the claim at all. It's just that, facts are facts. And to pretend that they aren't facts and that it doesn't make an impact on somebody's life, I think Jillian's right. It does cost lives or at least seriously affect them. And I think that's kind of what was happening here.
Yeah. I wonder where she's getting her information and data that larger bodies does not lend itself to higher risks.
So
because she asked Jillian for that. I wonder where she's seeing, because granted, I don't look specifically for that, but I haven't seen anything that's specifically saying being larger is not inherently a higher risk.
So, yeah, luckily with Surrounded, they do a good job. We can't see it in these clips exactly. You can kind of see a corner of it where they fact check them. But Jillian is usually, there was like one or two that I can't remember off the top of my head when she gives a statistic where it kind of clarifies. And honestly, she was pretty close. But later on in this clip, when she's talking to the eating disorder therapist, the eating disorder therapist makes some wild claims about how 90 to 95% of people who try to lose weight end up regaining it, and sometimes more, and that was wildly high. They did do a fact check on her and said that it does depend on the study and what the parameters that they're using, but typically it'll be between 33% and 66% that actually regain the weight, and some do regain more than they actually lost. So it's not a great statistic. They also bring up about yo-yo dieting and, you know, that kind of rebound, which I've been a victim of, as you know. I just mentioned those pictures. So, yeah, again, not to say that that's a healthy way to go, but again, the obesity thing is pretty well documented in the research and just anecdotally, I think. Yeah.
All right. I think you've got some more clips for us, so let's take a look at the next one.
Registered dietitian, school for 6 years, studying nutrition, weights, all the stuff. And we can't keep
lipotoxicity is.
It doesn't come up in my curriculum because it's bullshit. Because it's a TikTok thing that's like, you know, cortisol face or whatever.
It's
but
not,
please, just
listen
back to
to
the
me.
studies.
It is not bullshit.
Back to the studies.
It's ectopic fat.
But can we just
It's
say,
when
because you
fat
keep sidestepping and then we can
I'm
never
not
get anywhere.
sidestepping. This is the claim.
Okay.
Okay, the claim is that obesity is unhealthy. Lipotoxicity
But the
is
reason-
not bullshit.
but-
it is the definition of ectopic fat.
It's
When
funny it never
fat
came up in
gets
6 years of a
deposited-
professional accredited undergrad.
What's fatty liver disease?
I know what fatty liver. I was a
What
clinical
is it?
dietitian in a
That's
hospital.
lipotoxicity.
Okay,
Okay. When fat is in the liver, when fat is in the heart, when fat gets deposited in the brain.
Yeah.
That is lipotoxicity, and it happens when the body has no place to put the excess energy anymore.
Okay.
It is irrefutable that that is bad for your health.
So I know, again, this one talks about the terminology. Part of the reason I did choose these clips, too, is because it does explain some of the terminology. I think Jillian does a good job of breaking that down. And this one, unlike, you know, the eating disorder therapist, she is a registered dietitian. She says 6 years, so I'm not exactly sure where she went to school and, you know, if it's master's degree or all that type of stuff. But registered dietitian, you know, they're a step ahead of us in terms of our nutrition coaching. If we were to have a situation with a member where, you know, it was a little bit out of our scope and above our head, we would refer them to a registered dietitian. Not only that, but she's a clinical dietitian in a hospital, or at least was. And so I think that that's another issue, is, again, not necessarily understanding some of the terminology. And again, with this debate in particular, they talk more about the terminology between like obesity and fat bodied rather than understanding what is actually going on and some of the risks associated with just having excess fat. What do you guys think?
I think they're commonly getting carried away with the beliefs that are unrelated. Like, I feel like both parties going in a direction that's not actually answering the question of, like, coming to an agreement of, they're trying to like fight each other instead of actually coming to an agreement of whether or not they can see why having excess fat is bad for you. And lipotoxicity or fatty liver disease, I feel like I always have a problem when someone adds a more complicated word than what could be more commonly agreed upon. Like fatty liver disease really put it together for me because that's something that I've understood, I've learned about, I've seen before, but lipotoxicity in 10 years of being a trainer is not something that I've ever encountered. Granted, I'm not in a clinical space. And from my understanding, Jillian Michaels is not clinical either. She's
a celebrity trainer.
Yeah, like a personal trainer. So I feel like she's getting too in the weeds instead of actually having a conversation. But I think it is kind of scary for someone who is in a clinical setting to not understand that, and not have an understanding and a viewpoint of like seeing that excess fat in bad places is bad.
Well, I think too the emotional aspect of it, where it's like it's a TikTok thing and that's cortisol face. I'm like, I'm not exactly sure where all of that is coming from.
I don't spend enough time on TikTok to know.
Yeah, we only recently got it because we had to. So, But the lipotoxicity, I mean, she talks about it. It's like when fat infiltrates basically all of the major organs. So most people are familiar with the fatty liver disease, but fat can infiltrate everything. I mean, we've talked about even how people can have a lot of muscle, but it's not quality muscle if it's infiltrated with fat. And I mean, fat is an endocrine organ, so it does, you know, produce or cause your body to produce different hormones, and when those things get out of whack, I mean, we've done it with the menopause program. We've done it with other things. The hormones affect everything, from your mood to your overall health. And so I think it is important, you know, maybe we don't necessarily need to know the actual, you know, terms like that. Certainly not necessarily in our field. But again, as a clinical dietitian, I just think that with the body positivity movement, if you're going to try to be empowering and get people to understand their body and be proud of it and everything, you can't also be an enabler of their downfall. And so whether Jillian gets in the weeds or not, I did leave a lot of what she said in there so she could explain the terminology.
Yeah, that's fair.
She does it probably better than what we were going to do. But I just think it's relatively scary that if we have somebody in here with a clinical issue and we're like, you know what, go to this registered dietitian. We don't always know what registered dietitian they're going to go to. You know, maybe they choose one that we recommend. Maybe they choose someone else. But it is rather scary that a registered dietitian can be operating from a completely different set of facts, and I'll say facts very loosely, and it's almost like you can just select, like, well, what do you believe? Is it what I already believe? Then sure, let you and I will make a good team. And then does the problem ever get really solved? No.
Yeah.
Not in my opinion anyway.
I mean, I think at some point Jillian she's very focused on spitting the facts and breaking down everything in a scientific viewpoint, whereas I'm seeing a lot of defensiveness or the emotions, I guess, coming out versus, you know, actually thinking about what she's saying and taking that to heart. Because obviously, I mean, she's got the experience, and this registered dietitian of 6 years is not understanding where she's coming from and what she's saying. So there's some kind of disconnect there as well when it comes to the education. So where are they getting their facts? Like you said, is it TikTok or is it actually like a reputable site?
That's the other thing. She said she went to school, you know, for 6 years for this. Like, you know, so let's not even put all of the blame on her or anything, but like what was being taught in school when you're there for 6 years as a registered dietitian?
I don't know exactly what registered dietitians learn, but if it's just nutrition, that wouldn't get into like fatty liver disease, although they should be able to understand, acknowledge, not diagnose, but at least treat a lot of illnesses around food and nutrition.
Well, I do know that they'd have to do a dietetic internship, and if she's a clinical dietitian, she most likely did that in a hospital setting, in which case that is what you're supposed to. I mean, there has to be some type of outcomes that you're learning, not necessarily just what you should or should not eat. So I will say this though, and I'll throw this question to you guys because I know now it seems like I'm a huge Jillian Michaels advocate. But like when we do strategy sessions, you know, and I think this is part of where the emotion comes from with, you know, the eating disorder therapist and then even this registered dietitian. Sometimes after we get to know the person a little bit, we know their story, we know what their life is like, we get a little bit more lenient, or I'd be more defensive, you know, for them. And so that is a little bit of the downfall of being a personal trainer, getting to know these people, our members, our clients, and in the case of these people that are debating Jillian, you know, their patients. You know, you start to become a little bit defensive even against the facts, and you let them slide a little bit. And so I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I know that that's happened to me for sure.
You want to start with it? Yes. So whenever I am a health coach, which is a specific course and curriculum to help people obtain actual outcomes instead of just understanding it. So it's not really about what is healthy, what's not healthy. It's more about facilitating that with someone. So the main thing is like establishing habit change is the main thing behind health coaching. And one of the biggest things is instead of teaching or trying to educate or pushing more facts on them, is just helping them come to terms with it themselves and like understand themselves in a way that is helpful for them, or communicating to them in a different way than other people. And I think that is the biggest like disconnect here is I think the body positivity people, at least the ones that we've seen, they're trying to communicate to the person that they've treated or to themselves or the person that they've worked with. And Jillian Michaels is really focused on the facts. And sometimes the facts or perfection is not the way that we actually obtain a better quality outcome for people. And I've seen that with nutrition. Like, there's definitely certain things that I could do better, you could do better, you could do better, we can have our clients do better, but realistically, they're probably not going to do it. So what can be the smallest win that we can focus on for them that's going to actually move them in a healthier direction? And sometimes in at least the body positivity space, like not hating yourself, I think is usually a good start. I think a lot of overconsumption can come from hating your body, and then that just cycles and cycles. Like you eat because you hate your body, and then because you ate, you hate your body more, and then it just like keeps going further and further and further. So if we can actually learn to love our body, I think that is a big thing and part of why I support body positivity a little bit. But also I think there are some outlandish claims of like, this isn't actually unhealthy. I think that kind of loses me. And same thing with a lot of belief systems. There's just people on such far sides where somewhere in the middle is more accurate.
I think she could maybe input a little bit more empathy. I think she lacks empathy a little bit when it comes to talking to these people.
When we saw her on Biggest Loser, that was for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I will definitely say I had a different opinion after watching this versus that documentary. I never watched The Biggest Loser per se. Some of the stuff that you just talked about, we'll talk about more when she does Claim 3. And I won't jump ahead to that right now. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, and that's kind of what I was getting at with like the emotional side of things. The other stuff, you've posted a video on Brian Johnson. Like, of course, we could strive for perfection, but what does that do to your quality of life?
Yeah.
And I think there is some middle ground. You can't just do whatever it is that you feel like, and I mean, I guess you can, and let your body go to waste. I mean, some people end up so big, look at that 600-pound life, that they can't even leave their house. And if it were me, I would feel very claustrophobic, like in my own body. And it's just, that's not the quality of life. Meanwhile, Brian Johnson, he barely leaves his house or his cave, wherever it is that he lives.
His bat cave.
And, yeah, his bat cave. And he, has like his perfect Whoop scores and all this other stuff. So there's definitely some type of balance where you get to enjoy your life. Maybe you do eat some unhealthy food and all that type of stuff, but you're not necessarily going so overboard that you're causing damage to yourself.
Yeah.
Anyway, in this third clip, we're going to hear from somebody who actually has been overweight or, classified as obese her whole life, rather than somebody who's just in the field. So we'll go ahead and clip that.
I have lived in a fat body for like as long as I can remember. And I've known very many fat people. And I don't think any of us, the people that I know, I can only speak to the people that I know, I don't think any of us are pretending that we're okay with it. What I want to say here is I live with autoimmune disorders, I live with chronic illness, and I'm also neurodivergent. And this is, the body positivity movement has made it so that I can tolerate this life. I can find ways to thrive, even still. But I'm not pretending that this doesn't bother me. And by bother, I mean that it doesn't hurt to carry my weight. I'm willing to concede with you that carrying around extra weight is harder. It is. But it must be done.
I don't know that I agree with you.
Okay. Tell me more, please.
Well, tell me why you think it must be done.
Because I've worked really hard to not have this.
What does that mean? Like you beat yourself up in the gym or something?
No, I don't. That's not fun.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to understand what you mean.
I've done what I needed to do a number of times to try to lose weight.
What did you try? Tell me.
I've worked out at the gym. I've tried to do Pilates. Even yoga.
Okay.
Even yoga hurts me.
Okay, so the exercise causes you pain.
The
due to
exercise
autoimmune
causes me-
condition. Okay, no problem.
Right.
I'm with you.
Dieting, for example.
Okay.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think that food makes very much sense to me in my neurodivergent brain.
This is where mechanistic eating actually helps people who are neurodivergent, and the research supports that because it doesn't have to make sense to you.
Okay.
In other words, it's like you eat on these schedules and you eat these foods and you eat this much, hence the concept, right, of
Hard
mechanistic.
pass. I don't like that.
I understand that you don't like it, but you'll have to decide which you don't like more. Carrying the weight or the mechanistic eating, because it actually could be helpful. There are other ways forward, but you told me you tried them.
I tried a whole lot. There's a lot of other things to be concerned about. I'm also a social worker. I work with youth. There are a lot of.
Let's go back to you.
Yes.
Tell me.
I'm saying for me, right? There are many things that I'm more concerned about than my weight. My body is not the most interesting thing about me.
You just brought up your weight and said, I don't see a way out of this.
Right.
I've tried everything.
I take care of it in the ways that I can, and I've found works for me.
But you just told me it didn't work for you.
But it works to an extent.
You just told me it didn't work for you.
It works to an extent.
Then this is an irrelevant conversation if you're happy with it.
That's probably the first clip where I'm like very leaning into Jillian Michaels. It kind of goes in a little bit of what I was saying after the last clip of like, sometimes we have to accept that that's not what we want to work on, and losing the weight or whatever, or fitness. Like I'm in a state where I'm kind of like accepting where I'm at, and I'm not interested in working harder and pushing myself further in the gym. But also no one really enjoys working out. I think the people who like really, really enjoy it for a certain reason. But like if you take them out of that, they're not necessarily going to love it.
What do you mean by that?
Like working out's always hard. It's always uncomfortable, no matter how fit you are. It's going to be challenging.
It should be.
It should be, at least.
I was going to say, you can definitely do that. I've seen some clips on social media that claim it's fitness, and I'm like, wait, what?
Like I've been at a very high level of track fitness. I was a Division I track and field athlete, and like at no point was a run ever easy. I was so fit and like could beat almost anybody that you met on the street, other than other highly competitive runners. But like at no point were runs easy. So I think that the expectations are just very different for a lot of people on like what they're going to get out of the gym. And we all have to make something lose to get something else.
Just that there's sacrifices?
Yeah, we all have to make sacrifices to get something else.
Not only that, you have to want it enough.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that some of these people want.
Yeah, and that's okay.
That's fine. I'm not saying that that's a bad
Well,
thing.
and I think that's why Jillian was like, well, then this is kind of an irrelevant conversation. But there was a lot, and I don't think it's actually an irrelevant conversation with this particular woman, because she started out saying that, you know, it's harder to carry this weight. It physically hurts, and that life is generally harder. And I think the reason we see Jillian be a little bit more empathetic here is, one, because it's an actual person who's telling their story, and she has the weight issue, rather than with the dietitian and therapist, things were already heated, and you're coming at somebody that they're not necessarily the ones with the issue. And so there's not really a need to be as empathetic there. But when you're talking to somebody in a strategy session, I mean, we've talked to people that are almost exactly like this. Like, I've tried everything. And I think, Keegan, we've talked about this a few times where, and I've said this to clients right at that table over there, like that one of the issues and the reason you don't see much progress, even though you're thinking that I've tried everything, is because of like, okay, this week I'm going to do, X. So I'll make sure I get my 10,000 steps. after my 10,000 steps, I'm going to go to Good Berries and have ice cream, though, to reward myself. It's like, okay, I understand we're going to work on one thing at a time, but eventually you need to stack those habits if you want to actually see progress. What happens is people, all right, I did my 10,000 steps, and that kind of goes away. And a few weeks later, after they realize they've gained a little bit more weight, they're like, okay, that 10,000 step thing didn't work. Now I'm going to, eat X amount of protein, and that'll be my goal. So like everything is like, all right, you're almost there, but we're never actually stacking the habits. And then between you trying these habits, you end up with like weeks or months off, where then the weight gain is there, and you get frustrated and feel like you're on this hamster wheel and that nothing is working, but it's because none of the habits actually stacked up. You have to put together a more complete picture. And I know she mentioned Pilates and yoga, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with those things. But if you're looking to lose weight, then that's not the way to go. If dieting and food doesn't make any sense and you're not able to do the mechanistic eating, well, then I'm not exactly sure where to go with that type of stuff. And you kind of do have to accept at that point that, like, okay, well, then this is the path that you're choosing. And if you're okay with that, then, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and be like shaming you over your choices, but it's just when you talk out of both sides of your mouth that it's like, I have a little bit of a hard time. Like, so wait, what is it that you want to do? And what is it that, you're willing to do to either better the situation or accept the situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always external factors in our life that are maybe more important that take place of going to the gym or, trying to get healthy. But those things become exponentially easier the better in shape you are, the more fit you are. So coming from somebody who, I would say I'm very similar to the lady who Jillian was debating. I was 200 pounds. I've had 3 kids, and I've got 2 autoimmune diseases. So if I can do it, you know what I mean? But also other people have different factors. So I understand that, genetics does play a factor into it. But it seems like sometimes the excuses are just more compounding than the good habits. You know what I mean? And that causes an issue, and it causes for people to not stick to things. And when they don't stick to it, then they're not going to stay in shape, and they're not going to continue to progress, you know?
Yeah, and I totally agree that, I agree with the person that was debating Jillian there, where there are more important things than, your body and stuff like that to a certain point.
Yeah.
Also, she brings up that she was a social worker, and I was more in that field. I wasn't a social worker per se, but I was more in the direct care field, working at a special needs boarding school. I obviously have kids now, and I saw this analogy. I'm sure you guys have heard it before too, but when you're on an airplane and things are not going well and the masks come down, they tell you to put your mask on first so that you can help other people. So if you're in a state where you're, harming yourself through some of your choices, then how are you going to be of the best help for the people that you're trying to help? It's probably not going to work.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely, like I said, this is the most Jillian leaning I've been out of all these clips.
Don't cross that line, Keaton. All right, so we'll move on. That was the first claim in terms of, obesity is inherently unhealthy, and pretending that it isn't is more detrimental than anything else. The second claim that she makes is that big food companies, meaning like Nabisco, Coca-Cola, some of those, General Mills, they are the biggest profiteers off of the body positivity movement. And we'll take a look at this clip first and see what Jillian and her debater have to say.
Now, if they were beneficiaries and benefactoring and making all this money off of the body positivity movement, why is it that they spend billions on calorie counting apps, on a lot of things that we see in society as forcing the losing weight or talking about losing weight?
Can I give you some statistics?
Please.
Okay. So Washington Post analyzed more than 6,000 social media posts by 68 registered dietitians with a combined reach of over 9 million followers. 40% of them were using the anti-diet language, right? Like food freedom, no food rules, ditch the diet, healthy in any size, so on and so forth. Very often not disclosing the fact that they were paid by the big food companies when they're using your movement.
But do you, and I'm gonna say this clearly and for right now, I don't care who uses my fucking movement. I want the movement to be there. The movement starts and someone comes in and takes it, and someone comes in and comes in it, and someone comes in and runs with it.
You don't deny it, you just don't care, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying it's fine for them to do that, but the bigger issue that I want you to realize is that the body positivity movement is ultimately for us.
I just want to show you the ways in which this is being inside of I can't say that a big food company. You got it,
yes,
exactly.
yes.
Okay, so here's the intentional message overlap, right? So healthy at every size, quote, you can be healthy in any size. Corporate benefit, removes health concern barrier to sales. Dieting doesn't work, protects snack foods from being cut. Healthy in any size, weight and health are unrelated. Corporate benefit, deflects from products causing obesity. Healthy at any size, weight stigma causes disease, not weight. Wait.
Okay, I'm gonna let you
I'm
finish.
just showing you. This is an internal.
So basically, it was an internal email that was being sent, and it was leaked to Jillian Michaels through one of her friends, basically saying, how this messaging can actually, how their messaging and their spinning of things can actually manipulate the body positivity movement or co-opt their language rather, in order to improve their sales and kind of get them off of the hook for some of their responsibility for it. And I think that it's interesting and not surprising at all that influencers will take money and post whatever and not disclose any of it. But again, some of those are the registered dietitians or, maybe they're eating disorder therapists or maybe they're not. But regardless, they're on social media, which we already know is where a lot of people are getting their information from. And so, do you guys have a problem with that? Obviously, she did not.
I understand what she's saying in that I think the movement is separate from the big food companies. I don't think big food was like, what we need to do to make more money, make people who are overweight feel better about themselves. I don't think that was the intention. I think they saw an opportunity, and just like with any big company or marketing company, that's why they get paid billions of dollars a year. They're trying to find any way to maximize profit. I have an issue with that because I think it's manipulating something that at its core is probably rather positive, but it has been manipulated, as with any other movement, has been manipulated for profit for companies. And I have that issue with all movements. They're always going to be manipulated because there is a large group of the populace going in one direction. It's polarizing, it gets attention. So no matter what, they're going to be making money off of it. And I'm sure those big food companies, all of them are hedging their bets also with getting health food out. Yeah. So like Nabisco or whatever, they're making protein flavor or protein focused Pop-Tarts while also making regular Pop-Tarts. So no matter what, they're winning, whether you want to be body positivity or you want to just be more health focused, they're producing the food for you. So they're just maximizing their overall profit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's relatively immoral and unethical. And I don't even know why I said relatively, because it just is. It is immoral and unethical. I know that it's always going to happen, and I don't think there's going to be any real way to stop it. No. But I just think that it's interesting that she doesn't really care that much about the movement being co-opted, because again, they're paying the influencers and dietitians and stuff that are giving out this advice. Yeah. And I think that if we're going to, have a certain tier of, this is who you go to for the next step of help and all that, and they're being influenced and corrupted by some of the big food companies, well, then where do you go?
Yeah.
And it's
Peak City Gym.
Peak City Gym. We'll do a strategy session. But, you know, protein became, you know, the big buzz thing for the past few years. And now you see it all over everything. Like you just mentioned, the Pop-Tarts and all that. I'm sure we'll have like creatine cookies pretty soon. And it's going to get worse. But I think that people do need to be a little bit more upset about that stuff and not say, I don't care, I just need the movement there, because if the movement is corrupted, then where's it going? It's not going anywhere. It's no longer a movement. You're just standing in place, and there's no real change that's happening, in my opinion.
I think it's challenging because no matter what, if they changed the movement, if they did anything else and it had traction, the companies are going to come in and co-opt it anyways. So I think it's a lose-lose for them, and that the movement does exist, I think, is opening a lot more eyes and ears to a potential problem of seeing these people and like actually providing them with support outside of just giving them more food. Or like, it is so hard because it's such a convoluted movement, as with everything, because there's so many different perspectives and different types of people who are participating in it. Some people for profit, some people not for profit, and some people who are just like stuck in the middle of what do I actually do? As with nutrition has always been. Nutrition's always been the extremes, and no one ever knows what to do. They're just confused. And that's why we have strategy sessions, because that's 90% of the conversations we have is people don't understand what they should actually do because they've heard either side. Like, don't drink water. You got to drink hydrogenated water. Don't eat meat, but also get your protein in. Don't eat too many vegetables because they're poisonous and they're bad for you. Like, no matter what,
Bananas have too much sugar.
you're just gonna be eating air. Like, it's so challenging for a normal person who's not in the industry to see all of those things and then actually make a well-informed decision on what is actually healthy for them. And I feel for those types of people, and it's challenging when big food just has more money and they can tell you whatever they want. And
Protein Pop-Tarts are not healthy.
No.
Even if it says protein, don't.
No.
Stay away.
No, I definitely agree with all of that. And then to take it in a slightly different direction, you know, it kind of goes back to, you know, like the executives at Apple and some of the other places where it's like, oh, well, no, we don't let our kids use those devices. And no, we don't. I don't have a smartphone myself. I still use a flip phone because they know some of the negative outcomes. And I guarantee there's a bunch of executives at these big food companies that are pouring the money into, you know, corrupting the movement, that are also like, yeah, you're not going to be eating that. Like, they don't have that at their dinner table. It's not in their pantry, but they're perfectly fine with, you know, people getting sick and falling for these little marketing tricks as long as it's lining their pockets. So I think that's where a big issue is. And then number two, to piggyback off of what you said, that there's so many different perspectives and so many people with their hands in the, you know, metaphorical cookie jar.
Cookie jar.
Yeah, pun intended. Anyway, Jillian, one of the things that she did mention was that, and not in this clip, but that things need to be more streamlined so that there is accountability. There's nobody to hold anyone accountable. Everybody interprets this movement however they want to, and then it just becomes kind of a mess. And I think in that way, our industry, you know, if you look at certain people on social media, they don't take it as seriously as maybe they should, and then it just becomes like, well, you know, those people, you know, they're not willing to try. Those people are lazy, this and that. And I'm not. That's almost certainly not the case. I think we just heard from that person in the clip before under claim one that, like, you know, there is some effort, but they just feel lost and like things aren't working for them. And so inevitably they give up and they find somebody or a group of people that are more likely to agree and empathize with them than come up with a real change. All right, we'll listen to one more clip on this claim, and then we'll move on to Jillian's third claim.
Even want you to stop eating one chip. This is how incremental they are about this. They literally engineer.
sounds-
Just hear me out. They don't even want you to have to stop and take a drink of water when you're eating their chips. So they engineer how much fat is in your mouth in each bite. There are a team of multidisciplinary scientists that literally work around the clock, 24/7, day after day, year after year.
Their body positivity scientists.
No.
So this is the thing.
No, I'm
right?
saying
what you're
they
describing
want
is a
no
misuse of
friction.
science.
Yeah.
What you're
Yes.
describing is,
Yes.
what you're
They want
describing
no
is
friction.
business. What you're describing is capitalism. What you're
Yes.
describing is greed.
Yes. I'm
Body
happy to indict
positivity
that.
is not the reason for that.
They have effectively lobbied to remove nutrition guidelines and warning labels on food packaging because of harmful shame. It's like trans fats are bad for your health.
Okay,
it's a fact.
They have advocated for that. The
Yes,
body positivity movement, the
they're
fat activist movement, they're
your
using
messaging.
our language, right? Like
Yes.
you said, co-opting.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So they should stop co-opting our shit.
But they're not going to. But
Right.
yes, that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
so how do we
I
build
think
more-
you guys should get pissed about it. Like I get the things you're pissed at.
We are pissed about a lot of
I
things.
get it.
This
Can you
is a-
add this
it's
to
a
the list?
long
Add
list.
this.
This
to, I'm
is-
saying they're the primary. You want to
And
indict someone?
It is on the
indict
list
these.
It is on the list for some people whose focus is body positivity, right? We have different foci. I think one of the problems is the assumption that everything that has to do with food and its lack of health correlates with fatness.
This kind of goes along with what we were just talking about in terms of the corporate greed and stuff like that. But we've known since the 80s that big food companies have been trying to make foods hyper palatable with certain combinations of sugar, fat, salt. And I don't know if their goal is necessarily to make sure that you don't drink water while you're eating chips, but it is certainly to make sure that you keep eating and eating and eating, and then, oh, it's gone, let me go grab another bag.
Their goal is definitely to elicit as addictive of a response as possible. This woman's last claim of, I don't agree with people connecting food with fatness. I think that is like the leading cause of fatness. It's an excess of energy, unless I misunderstood what she was trying to say. It seemed like she was trying to say food does not equal fatness.
Yeah, she was essentially saying that. She said the unhealthy part of food. We can listen. Let me see like what the actual last sentence was there. But
Different foci. I think one of the problems is the assumption that everything that has to do with food and its lack of health correlates with fatness.
so
I
yeah,
feel like unhealthy food does directly correlate with fatness in excess. Like I definitely eat unhealthy food on a regular basis. Maybe not every day, but at least regularly.
you have blueberry turnovers in the back. But go ahead.
I didn't have one today, okay? But I had two the other day.
I'll probably have one after this podcast.
Like, I am aware that if I eat more of that, I will have more adipose tissue or fatness. But because I eat those, that does not make me fat.
No, it also doesn't make you a lesser quality person or anything about that. That's where I think that things get very convoluted, and why it was very difficult for me to watch some of these debates where I was like, oh, you're talking about very different things. We're jumping all over to different topics and stuff like that. And I know we are in this industry, so we do have more information, and we spend a lot more time focused on, what is healthy, what's unhealthy, what are the effects of both things. But it's a kind of consistent theme throughout a lot of these debaters that ultimately they don't care. They don't care about the food being unhealthy. They don't care about the terminology being co-opted. They don't care about, this is actually, the right answer and how you would need to go about things. Like, well, this works for me, even though I just said it doesn't work for me. And it's very frustrating because I don't know. Our job is to help a lot of people that have that type of thinking. Most of the time, by the time they come into our doors, that thinking is kind of shifted. We don't really have that at our membership level. But again, when we're trying to help people who are trying to avoid a lot of these issues, and not just not just obesity, but I'm talking about the things that we mentioned earlier when we made the over 30 switch, was the sarcopenia, osteoporosis. I mean, those things are oftentimes also a result of malnutrition and a sedentary lifestyle. So it's very difficult for us, and I know it's our livelihood, and capitalism was already brought up and all that stuff, but it's very difficult to help people who seemingly don't care, but also care.
A lot.
Because again, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, and it's very difficult to find out, like, how can I connect with you and help you out and get you out of some of this pain and avoid some of these things in the future when you're not that concerned about it.
I mean, they're concerned enough to debate about it, but not concerned enough to go to the gym and change their diet. That's where the problem lies.
Yeah. I genuinely don't care if you're fit, fat, healthy, whatever. That does not matter to me. I don't care. I just want what you want, as a trainer, at least, I just want what you want. I want to help you achieve whatever goal you want to achieve. And obviously in my industry, I don't have people coming to me to be like, hey, can you make me fatter? It's generally not who's going to talk to a personal trainer. But like, I don't care. Like, your outcome is your outcome. It doesn't impact me at all. I just want what's best for you. And what's best for you is generally what you want. So I just help people achieve the things that they want. But like, it's hard for me, for people, like you said, I want to change. I've tried everything, but I still can't change. So that's okay. I'm just going to not try anymore. I don't think giving up on the solution or on the problem is what you should do. I think that's giving yourself into what big food wants, or what these corporations want you to do, to like live an unhealthier life, or like live in misery. Like, they're going to profit off of all of it. And I had intended on bringing this up earlier, but like, pharmacy and medicine's also profiting off of all of this. They specifically profit off of reactive medicine instead of proactive medicine. They make all of their money off of servicing what is wrong with you in the moment than what could potentially go wrong with you down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know we'll watch a clip that kind of talks about that later.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think that like our industry could do better? Because like, for example, I had somebody who came in and she's already lost, I think, like 50 pounds or something like that. And as far as like, I've only met her the one time. So as far as like appearance wise, like, oh, you look generally healthy. You started running. Now, I don't know about all of her diet and everything like that, but she came in here and she's looking to get stronger. Help improve her running mechanics and stuff like that. We didn't really talk about the weight loss stuff, other than she told me she had already lost a bunch of weight and now was looking to get stronger. However, we were, I think, the third or fourth gym that she visited. And one of the other gyms that she went to, she got on the in-body scale, you know, where you stand on it, you hold on to the little handles, it tells you your body fat and all that. And I don't know if it was a new trainer or if this is just like his MO or whatever it is, but it was like, oh, you probably need to lose about 3 pounds. And even I can never control my facial expressions, but they looked like yours right there, where I was like, what? Like, one, if somebody's like, you could pee that out by tomorrow morning for all we know. Like, you know, this is at the end of the day, because of course she came here after work. That's when she's been visiting the gyms and stuff like that. I'm like, what difference is your life going to be like with 3 pounds? And as a trainer, like what are you going to do once they hit that goal? Like, all right, you lost your 3 pounds. Are you good now? Like, what? So I do think that there are definitely issues with our industry and some of the ways that we come across, but just interested in, I know you said how you handle things, and it's not necessarily like not that you don't care, but you don't necessarily care about the outcome as long as like they're happy with it and they're content with their life. But what are ways that like our industry could really help people shift their focus and it wouldn't be about weight loss and fat loss all the time?
I think in general, people need to maybe encourage them to be more active. We live in such a nice environment where there's really no excuse to go outside, go take a walk, go on the greenway, go, walk your dog. That's something that people need to do more, especially with people working inside and working from home. They have an issue with that. So I would also suggest getting those standing desks or like a standing treadmill, because we're gravitating so much out from the going outside, going to the office, that people are just stuck inside, stuck in their little cubicle, even if they do go to the office, and they're not continuing to be active enough, and also making sure that we hold them accountable for what they're doing, checking up on them when we see them. Hey, how is everything going? Are you meeting your steps? Are you making, just making sure we are following up with their goals.
Yeah.
And talking to the person, I've gotten a lot of compliments over the years on how I communicate with the people that I train. And it's not just like using empathy or anything like that, but also just like the verbiage I use changes depending on the client, what we're talking about. And I change it within even a conversation based off of how they respond to certain things. So I am constantly adjusting my way of communicating, educating, teaching to a way that is going to be more understood by that person instead of talking above them the whole time. I think a lot of trainers who, because the industry is very challenging to make an actual living off of, it's very high turnover. So we have a lot of new trainers that last for a couple years and then they end up going to somewhere else. It's like a stopgap job. But so they are only just educated from the book, and then they take that book as gospel. They go and they try and instill that book for everybody else. And they're like, if you're not like this, then you're not healthy, and there's no in between. Instead of being like, this is where you're at right now, what can we actually do to move you towards that direction? Because honestly, no one's ever going to achieve what the book says.
Yeah.
Even the quote unquote healthiest looking individuals, bodybuilders, athletes, whatever, their health is shot. I know I was a very high level track athlete, and I also competed in bodybuilding show at a very low level. I was not very competitive, but like even at a not competitive bodybuilding show, I was incredibly unhealthy. Like my health metrics were terrible, even though I looked healthy or I looked fit. It's been co-opted by what the book shows, by what social media shows, what marketing shows, that we're supposed to be and look this specific way, when in reality, like, it's not that big a deal.
It's very individual, and I think
Yeah.
that everybody. One thing I do agree with the body positivity movement is they say every body is different and every body is beautiful. I do agree with that to a certain extent, because what works for some person isn't going to work for the next person, and you do need to individualize the training so that it, will help that specific person.
Yeah, I agree with you, and agree with you. The individuality of it. You're not. I don't look at social media and be like, man, that's what the epitome of health is and all that. I mean, look how many bodybuilders like, oh, I thought he was super healthy, low body fat, and it's like dead, 48, and it's like, what happened there?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it, obviously in bodybuilding, there's a lot of drugs and other stuff like that. But you need to decide what healthy is for you. And we've talked about before in terms of strength, what is it that you want to be able to do? And then you need to be able to be strong enough to do that. And it's kind of the same way when it comes to leanness and other things. Like, well, what do you want your life to be like? Do you want to feel claustrophobic? Do you want to feel things are against you in terms of, oh, I can't fit in this seat, or I can't go to this place because they only have high chairs or something like that? Well, then, some of your decisions probably do need to change. But if you're okay with, I can't go to that stuff and I can do everything else that I want to do, then okay, and cool. No problem with that. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like some people miss this, but like, I feel like I look pretty average, pretty typical, maybe even healthier than a lot of people, but like, I still get in my own head about not being fit enough, not looking good enough, not being strong enough. Like, those feelings never go away. And that's why I think one of the biggest misconceptions and missing pieces for a lot of people is just the psychology behind it. Being able to control those thoughts in a way that is beneficial for you, instead of letting those thoughts control you and pushing you in either direction, either a unhealthy direction where you lose all the weight and you're super skinny, or an unhealthy direction where you gain all the weight and you're unhealthy in that direction. I think psychology is really just that biggest missing point in health at all. Once you can control those thoughts, it becomes a lot easier to do whatever you want to do, go in any direction that you want to go. And I think that is part of the body positivity, because that is controlling some of those thoughts of like, it is actually okay for me to look this way, which I think in some cases it is, but it is getting co-opted by a lot of different bad actors.
Yeah, I think the psychology thing is definitely a valid point. I think we all have insecurities and things, and I think that the biggest part of that too is having the right support system. And I know a lot of people in the body positivity movement would say like, well, this is my support system and everything. However, if you're surrounded by people that are encouraging and enabling your unhealthy habits that are ultimately leading to your demise, it's probably not as good of a support system as you would think. So again, knowing what your goals are and what, like, this is how healthy I want to be, this is what I want to be able to do. You know, if it's something to do with clinical numbers and this is what I want my cholesterol and whatever to be, then awesome. You need to find people that are going to support those behaviors. And sometimes that does mean cutting some people out that are not as supportive of those goals. In either direction, by the way, not just necessarily, enabling you to continue on destructive paths nutritionally.
It's always easier to stay on whatever path you're on now than to make a change.
Agreed.
It's always easier.
Good ending for that segment. All right, so we'll watch. The third claim is that the body positivity movement oversimplifies disordered eating and trauma. And so I know that if you watch the actual episode, a lot of people talk about their individual, anecdotes. And so I did not clip those because, one, then we'd be talking about some person who's not even here to defend themselves. Also, it's a clip on social media, so we don't really have the full context. We don't know those people. But there are still a couple of clips that I want to play, and I think there's only 2 of them. So this won't be too much longer.
When I came home and I said, I want ding dongs in my lunch. You know what my mom bought me? Low-fat ding dongs. And low-fat ding dongs aren't wrapped in foil. So everybody knows they're fucking low. It's not a fucking ding dong. I want the foil. So she's acting out of her trauma. Now I'm just like, I didn't choose to be here. And now I'm like, literally this woman is crying as I get off the plane from the Yoo-hoo trip because I had gained so much weight. My grandparents had to buy me new clothes. But I think that great aunt that offered me the Yoo-hoo and said, it's right here, honey, and you don't have to ask anybody when you want one, she knew. She knew I was being restricted at 6 years old. And that is why at 26, when you hear about body positivity and you're like, well, I've been on a diet for like 20 years, maybe there's more to life than trying to lose weight. That's what body positivity has given me. So do I still want, of course, to make the right choice every day for my nutrition? Yes.
When was it when your mom put you on a diet? You said 6.
I mean, after that Yoo-hoo incident, it was a real.
Did that make you feel the way you're currently describing?
No, I didn't know what was. At 6 years old, it's like I knew the ding dong was different because it didn't have the foil, but I didn't understand.
I know, because it becomes you, but unconsciously you do understand. And now, this pattern is playing out everywhere. It has a name. It's literally Freudian. It is called a repetition compulsion.
So one of the reasons I selected this clip is because my own mom did this stuff to me, where I wanted fruit roll-ups and stuff in my lunch, and my mom went to Fresh Market and got like grapefruits that were like dried and rolled, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is not what I want. And I will say that if you look at the pictures leading right up until college, when I was living in their house, very lean, all good. I was playing sports and all that. As soon as I went to college, though, bam, Mountain Dew for breakfast, 2 steak and cheeses at night. I went to a very good college with food, so I can definitely understand that, like, all right, well, I'm able to do what I want now, and this was not allowed when I was younger. Also, when I started dating Ashley and I opened up their pantry, and I was like, this is literally everything my mom would not give me. And I married that woman. I mean, I do understand from that perspective of like, oh, I was confined and restricted before, and now that I'm older, I don't have to do that. However, again, what has that led to now? It's led to a person who is definitely, has probably some life-threatening behaviors. Maybe not immediately right now, but you can tell, and through more of her interviews, she's actually a debater a few times, and Jillian straight up tells her after she asks, when you look at me, do you see somebody who needs some type of life-altering intervention? And she says, be honest, and Jillian says yes. And I mean, I would agree with that. Like, yes, if you want to live a long, healthy life, if you want to, I think she did say she was married. I don't know if she has kids or not, but if you want to be there and you want to be able to, be the best mom and best wife and best person that you can, it's going to be very hard if you're consistently battling an illness or you're consistently restricted in what you can do, where you might not necessarily be making the memories with your family, but watching them from the sidelines. And I think that's where for me, where like I do want certain things for our members, but it's not a selfish thing or a size. It's like, no, I want you to be able to live your life and not feel like, man, I missed out because, I like Nabisco and General Mills, stuff like that.
I honestly feel like this ties exactly into like the last thing I said of it is more psychology than anything, because this is a trauma response or a reaction or a habit learned, where if she were able to not solve this, but like understand it and like work on ways to overcome this, her outcomes would be vastly different. And I grew up with a family that restricted the things we ate. Like we got fruit baskets for Easter some years instead of candy baskets. Not that me and my brother ever had weight issues, because we literally could eat 10 plates of food at all-you-could-eat buffets and be totally fine because of exercise. We also had a genetic lottery in that case as well. But like it did imprint on me that, one, I just grew to like a lot of those foods more than I have soda. Like, are they good? Yeah, but I still generally prefer fresh fruit over artificial fruit or things like that. Like, we were restricted, but it really just depends on the person and how they respond. And it's really interesting, and something I've talked with members about before is like sometimes people can have the exact same interactions. Like me and my brother were 6 years apart, so we had slightly different, but like we had the same parents, but they were very similar in terms of how they parented us. It's like totally different. Me and my brother could not be different in a lot of ways. Or like Drew Barrymore. I didn't know she went into rehab at 13 because she was addicted to drug and alcohol when she was 9. And now she is sober and she's taking care of her parents because she's been able to make such a big career out of acting and stay sober and make healthier choices for her life, even though it would be far easier to enjoy what she has and like revert back to old habits. I think there's a lot of emotional work that we need to do instead of just highlighting this as trauma. Nothing you can do about it. Maybe there are some things that we could do about it, and like acknowledging that there was trauma, but also trying to fix it.
And learn
from
and
it.
because if she eventually, you had mentioned she's married, if she wants to have kids, I'm sure she doesn't want to revert to the same things that her mom did, and she doesn't want to go to the extreme and not do, there's I think a happy medium. I don't think that necessarily giving your kid a low-fat ding dong is a good substitute for a regular ding dong. I mean, an apple would have been a better choice.
Use the real ding dong.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I argue that all the time. If you're gonna have something, just have the real thing instead of having a protein Pop-Tart. Have a regular Pop-Tart. And just make different choices elsewhere.
Sprinkle some protein powder on it.
Exactly. And she's probably packing that for her kids' lunch every day. And that's where the issue lies, is that's something that needs to be a treat for once a week. But hopefully you would hope that they take the information that they take from this and learn from it and hopefully implement that into their daily lives so that they don't continue to make those mistakes. But it doesn't look like a lot of these people are.
They're not there to
retaining
listen or learn
the information.
They're there to debate and to prove their point. And I think that's the same thing with anyone who wants to argue. They're trying to prove their point instead of actually learn and come to a resolution.
It makes a way better series when people are just arguing rather than like, oh, actually, I learned something.
Arguing with their emotions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was one other point that I did want to make about this, and now it's kind of eluding me here, but We'll see if it ends up coming back after this. After
Need more
this next
creatine.
clip. Yeah, need more creatine. Oh, actually, I do remember. So let's talk about it real quick before we get into this clip. But this goes back to like our own members and our strategy sessions and things. You know, and it's way out of our scope. But I do agree with Jillian's claim that the body positivity movement, or at least what it's turned into, does kind of mask or undermine some of the complexities of the disordered eating and past trauma. Because I've sat at that table and gone over things, and we'll talk about like, all right, here's your plan. This is what we need to do. And as you guys know, because we all work here, like we're not strict. We're not telling people you have to eat chicken and rice and this and that. It's like typically we're going to focus on protein intake, getting your steps in, getting your water in. And then when I meet with the person 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, it's like, there's been a lot of Domino's deliveries and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And there will be tears sometimes. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, well, we have this, plan written down. Clearly, it's not just, oh, I didn't know what the nutrition was. A lot of people know exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right there. It's not like a hidden secret. Even the people that are talking on here, we've talked about, they don't necessarily care that the big food companies are doing what they're doing. They know that some of those choices are not going to be in the best interest of their health. So I do think that in some cases, the body positivity movement or whatever, or what it's become, has undermined some of the, trauma and disordered eating. And it shows just because they'll focus on the nutrition thing, and I tried to stick to this plan, but that's not necessarily why they're going off the plan. It isn't because they don't know or because it's just hard and the food is addictive. There's definitely some other things that are way out of our scope and above our head. And I've told people that we have people in here with some very traumatic histories. When some of that was childhood, some of it might have been in their marriage and things like that. And I feel bad because there's not really much that I can do to help them out. My job is we're going to talk about the fitness and nutrition side of things. Once we get beyond that, out of my scope, I'll sit here and listen all day, but I don't have the tools or capacity to help you with those things. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, and they don't necessarily know exactly where to go. All right, well, let's go to this clip now that I'm done.
And when I think about the folks who have been using that terminology since the 70s, 80s, 90s, not just the people who kind of popped up using it on Instagram and Tumblr in the 2000s, but that it has this long, long history. That long history is actually about body justice.
I know.
It's not just about individual feelings. It's not just about, my mother-in-law said something to me at dinner, or this guy didn't want to date me because I was fat. It's actually also about things like, do I have access to healthcare, weight-neutral healthcare that actually treats my symptoms, not just my body?
It's one of my favorite clips, as you know. Go ahead, Keegan. What you got? I see the wheels turning.
I said this earlier. It's just how silly it is to me that we would want our health care system to treat reactively and treat our symptoms instead of trying to fix or prevent actually getting to that place. Like, I don't understand why anyone would want to do that when you could just avoid it in the first place. Like, I don't personally want to go into the doctor unless I need to. Like, I don't know why I would have the desire to want to make choices to where they're just going to treat my symptoms instead of trying to solve the root cause of it. That doesn't make sense to me, and that's honestly wild. And I don't necessarily understand like body justice. I feel like that resonated with some people on this clip and in this audience or in this episode of like body justice. I don't want anyone to tell me what I should and shouldn't do with my body. I agree with that. If that's what body justice is, cool. If you're happy with being overweight, cool for you. Like, it doesn't change my opinion on you. It doesn't change how I would treat you. And I guess that does change in some situations. But also, if you want to make those choices and be in that direction, I don't think it's fair for you to want to change all of society. Like I'm 6'1", like that's not that tall, but there's airplanes are uncomfortable for me. I don't want airplane to change how they do their seating in order to make it more comfortable for me. Like it's just my lot in life.
Well, even if you do want that, it's
it's not gonna
ridiculous
happen.
to expect.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But like, I kind of just deal with it because I'm 6'1" and I can't really change that about myself. So I'm uncomfortable. If I know a lot of body positivity is like they can't change it, everyone else should change around me. I don't think that that's fair because there's a lot of people who it is comfortable for. And I don't know. It's frustrating to me for a lot of all of those scenarios of like everyone should change for me, but also I want people to accept me. And I mean, frankly, I do accept you, but also I'm not going to change the way I live my life so that you feel more comfortable with it. I'm not going to actively try to be derogatory or make you feel bad about yourself, but I'm also not going to go out of my way to make you feel good about yourself when I'm just trying not to interact with you.
Yeah.
Or when you're inherently making choices that don't benefit your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's one of my favorite clips. There's not much context around that last statement that she said. I do know so some context about her because she's a debater, I think 2 or maybe even 3 times. But she runs an organization called NAFA, and they talk about how I don't know exactly what the acronym is. I can't remember, but it's essentially like a body positivity and fat acceptance organization, basically. And so they talk about how it got started, and Jillian Michaels is familiar with the story, but a guy's wife was treated unfairly when she went into the doctor's office. And so that's how he ended up starting the organization, was more to get like fair and equal treatment for, in their case, as they say, larger bodied people or obese people. And while I definitely can understand how how some of the medical industry would be a little bit discriminatory or derogatory towards people that are seemingly making choices that, again, lead to their demise. I mean, even when we covered the menopause program a couple of years ago, they basically used to just call it crazy woman disorder. And if someone went in with menopausal symptoms, it was like, yeah, there's a crazy woman in room 1, so have fun dealing with that. So I can totally agree that like there probably are doctors' offices and medical professionals that, you know, make you feel not great. But I don't understand, like you're saying, how do you want them to treat your symptoms without treating your body? Your body is literally the reason that you're experiencing these symptoms. I mean, again, it's a general statement, so I don't know exactly what symptoms she's referring to. But I think that we can probably extrapolate and understand that like there probably a lot of issues have to do with the body weight and the excess fat. And you're saying, just give me a pill, give me something, I'm going to continue on this destructive path, and then need yet again another pill or something like that.
Counteract the effect of one pill so you get another. And this is where my claim is that it's not just big food, it's also pharmaceuticals and medicine profiting off of this movement.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You have anything?
Well, I just think also I think it's becoming more extreme because you'll have the people who are on the opposite end who are taking the Ozempic. So now all these people in the body positivity movement are seeing people just get instantly skinny. And I feel like they're almost maybe angry at that too. So I guess I'm not really understanding. I mean, I guess I can understand when it comes to going into the doctor, but if they know that there's physicians that are just there to make their lives easier and better for them, then why wouldn't they take that initiative to go? Is because, like you said, they're okay with how they are.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily want to. They're okay with being big, or like the woman said at the beginning, is that's just how it is, and that's just how she's supposed to be. When that's her mindset, so it's not gonna improve, you know.
Yeah, mind is a very powerful thing, and it will dictate a lot of your decisions and things, just like you talked about with the psychology. Since you brought it up, and I wanted to ask this anyway, but Do you think that with GLP-1s, Ozempic, and some of that the body positivity movement in terms of acceptance of the larger bodies is kind of over or on the decline?
No, because I think there are some people who frankly can't afford it, or it goes against them, so they're going to staunchly lean into what they have made their careers off of until it goes away. But also, I feel like they're different audiences. The body positivity is about encouraging and embracing your body as is. And GLP-1s is about changing your body. Do I think there are some people from the body positivity movement who are starting to take GLP-1s and make that transition? Yeah, but I think the large vocal proportion are not. I think that it goes against what their belief actually is, because then that would be admitting that there is actually an issue and that they are acknowledging that there are detrimental health effects of that adipose tissue.
Well, and we've also seen it in the past too. Like with everybody skinny right now, back in the early 2000s, it was like those real skinny, Nicole Richie, Paris Hilton type of people that people were. And that was before taking any pills. That was just the anorexia, not eating.
Cocaine.
So, yeah. So I think they see those people as similar to, the people back in the early 2000s, and they don't want to be like that.
Yeah. It is a very interesting balance of like the shape that people want, like GLP-1s, but also they want big hips and big. I kind of look to the Kardashians for like, what is the current trend on aesthetics? Because they tend to be like, in terms of like body, like the bigger hips kind of started with one of the Kardashians, Khloe, I think. And I feel like that really pushed getting a big butt in the gym. And a lot of people wanted to do that, or the Brazilian butt lifts.
That wasn't attained in the gym, but.
Just
so you know.
That was a Brazilian butt lift, but that pushed a lot of women who could
Keegan's
not do.
been trying to master that program for a long time.
Who were not able to do a Brazilian butt lift would go to the gym and achieve that. So I feel like they've kind of been the trend in one direction right now, and I guess there's someone else that's going to take that torch and lead it in a different direction. I don't know what that is yet, but skinny seems to be in now.
I think it's the TikTokers.
The talk TikTokers.
Yeah, the skinny TikTokers who are just out there doing brand trips, being really skinny, and
Which is crazy.
that's how they live their lifestyle. Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily the body positivity people that end up going on GLP-1s are going to say that, oh, I've admitted that, fat is a problem and can lead to, negative health outcomes. I think that some of them will just take it because they'll say that, okay, well, now this is body positivity because, again, every body, every size, all that different stuff. And obviously, we know that there's some negative health outcomes that can happen with taking the GLP-1s. I do think, though, and we've talked about this before, it's not an all or nothing thing with the GLP-1s where, like, it's not great for anybody. There's never a case where this is good. Again, you have to look at, like, what are the pros and cons? The pro of staying on the path you're on, the cons of staying on the path you're on versus the cons of taking the GLP-1s and all that. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where all this leads to with, body positivity, GLP-1s. I think there's probably going to be some infighting and things like that in the movement. But I think all in all, it was a good series. I encourage anybody to go ahead and check it out on Jubilee because obviously we just did clips and it's very hard to get the entire context. So if anybody wants to, I'm sure you'll link it on the comments. On the comments on YouTube. In case you want to check it out, I'm not going to lie, it's like an hour and 46 minutes, so it's a bit of a commitment. Luckily, I have a commute, and so I was able to listen to it multiple times.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to the Longevity Lab here with Peak City Gym. We look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.